Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Oh, Miles here.
Owl Post for the week is freshly delivered, and I am just one of your hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as she is always, ready to deck the halls of Hogwarts, Andrea Coffman.
Hello.
Hello, how was your Thanksgiving?
Peachy.
Excellent.
And yours?
It was wonderful, so much food, and Christmas is here, so I'm super excited.
Oof. I'm glad someone is.
Well, yeah, I guess it's a little less stressful because I don't have a kid, and it means I get to put up the Christmas tree because I always do that.
We put the Christmas tree up before Thanksgiving this year, which never happens, but Thanksgiving was so late this year. And we do an annual holiday party pretty early in the month of December, so we put it up knowing we were going to have so much stuff to do that was one less thing on the list, but I thought my husband was going to die when I asked him to put it up the week of Thanksgiving. I think we put it up the Sunday before, and I think it took all of his self-control not to humbug the whole process. So
that's really funny.
Yeah.
I normally put it up around the day before Thanksgiving, day of Thanksgiving or whatever. Anyway, so got off early the day before Thanksgiving and put it up then, which is great. To me, it's this has nothing to do with Owl Post, but it's just it's so much work.
Yeah,
I want it to be up for at least a month to be able to enjoy it because it's just a lot of work. So when I spend 3 or 4 hours putting up the Christmas tree, I better get to enjoy that thing.
Yeah, ours doesn't take that long. It's newer and the pieces are pretty easy to put together. And then the ornaments become a process for the little one to put up. She likes to do that. So that works out. She calls them all balls. She thinks they're all balls you play with. But yeah, we usually have a hard, fast rule that the day after Thanksgiving, because we almost always take that day off of work because just there's no reason to go back to work that day. Nobody does anything anyway. And so we just usually put the tree up that day, but because it's almost December at that point, it just didn't make sense this year. We partook in other things, and the little one hung out with Grandma and Grandpa for a little while, and we got to kind of do some of the holiday stuff without her, so that was kind of nice. But all in all, we had a fairly decent Thanksgiving. So
we're at Chapter 10, House of Gaunt, and before we reach that, of course, just make sure that you are subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Hit us up with a star rating review over on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at Join Nerd Party. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Nerd Party. And go to thenerdparty.com where you can go to the contact section. You can send us an email. And you can also see what else is going on in the network podcast-wise, because there is so much that's happening there. So, Drea, the chapter starts, and, Harry Potter has become famous in potions.
Yeah, it's a pretty monumentous occasion, and not one that we expected from potions and Harry.
Yeah.
This also becomes, this starts off as kind of a lighthearted chapter and just kind of overall ends on a very, very dark sort of note. So I'm glad we kind of start high before we sort of plummet into where we start to get out of the kids' book or the young adult book and more into the teenage young adult book. Again, the last book sort of starts taking us there, and this one gets really dark really fast.
I love that they're talking about the Half-Blood Prince, and Hermione's or herself. It could be a girl. And Harry's like, how many girls call themselves princes? And Hermione's just like, fine, your logic. And she just goes back to doing whatever she was doing, which I thought was really funny.
I do really love that she doesn't have a retort for that. I love that she's trying to find the equality in here. Oh, or her. And I love that. But then he's like, I don't know. And she's like, fine, maybe you're right. I'm just going to...
Hermione's not usually out-logicked by anybody, but yeah, I think that's what she was like, okay.
You can almost hear her cursing at herself in her head.
It was really funny.
It was really good.
This is an interesting chapter because the whole chapter takes place with Dumbledore and Harry. But one thing that happens before that is that Harry's on his way to go to Dumbledore's office, and he sees Trelawney, who is randomly walking the halls looking at this old ratty deck of tarot cards and talking to herself, and as she passes, she just smells like a winery. And so it's just a strange, very strange scene to have happen before we go meet Dumbledore in his office. Kind of lets you know that not all things are well with Trelawney.
Well, yeah, and she's saying a lot of these things about, situations that, like, it almost has this eerie, cryptic moment when when she runs into Harry, because it makes a point of pointing out, like, that she stops exactly what she's doing in her tracks when she sees him. Not like, oh no, I got caught drunk wandering the halls of Hogwarts, because that sounds awesome, by the way. But more along the lines of, like, she's frozen in fear, and not so much like she's frozen because she realizes something, not because she got caught drunk wandering Hogwarts, which are very different kinds of stops. They're very different kinds of stops. Let me tell you. I can tell you from personal experience, kids, don't drink till you're old enough. But I can tell you from personal experience, they're different kinds of realizations.
Yeah, it's just interesting. It just seems kind of like a strange scene to have happen before that, going to Dumbledore's office. And I love that when we get in there, there's some wonderful niceties between Harry and Dumbledore. Him talking about how you had a really busy, week here at Hogwarts, already getting your first detention. And Harry's just kind of like super awkward about it, but he realizes that, Dumbledore doesn't seem upset at all about this. And he also mentions that he's worked out with Snape that he'll be doing the detention next Saturday with Harry. And so it was just there is a new sense of familiarity between Dumbledore and Harry. And I think in some ways, Harry is just trying to figure out how to navigate that, because we have another level of their relationship at this point. And so I think Dumbledore does a great job of kind of trying to put Harry's mind at ease here. Like, we're here for a specific reason together, and it's not about, the things that happen between you and Snape in class. That's not even important at this point.
And I feel like there's a little bit of acceptance that it's not going to be fair, that everything the one has to say about the other, either direction, is going to be kind of biased, right? So I think it's kind of his way of being like, this is neutral territory. I don't really care what your beef is there. We're going to do here. I tried this once and it blew up in my face. So now I'm going to move past that. And I do love that as he's kind of explaining what they're going to do for the evening, he almost has a little bit of humor with it, even though it's kind of a very deep process they're going to go through, right? He mentions they're going to go into the Pensieve together. And he mentions, I know it's weird this time, but we're going to go together. Kind of like, giving an homage to the times that Harry has snuck into the Pensieve, or the time that Dumbledore has been there by himself. I kind of like that there's almost a little bit of self-deprecating humor built into this portion before they get in and look through this memory of this, the head of the magical law enforcement division, last name, it's Ogden. I don't remember the first name off the top of my head, but
Bob Ogden.
Bob Ogden.
Sounds
I can't think of a better
normal.
boring name.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry if anyone's name is Bob Ogden. That's the whitest name I've ever heard.
It's pretty funny. Yes, he does. Yes. What I love too about this, is Dumbledore's kind of giving his preamble to Harry is they talk about, look, I told you everything I know in concrete. Like everything I know concretely about Voldemort last year. Now we are going to be kind of traveling into the realm of conjecture. And he says to him, look, whereas I think I'm right, That doesn't mean I can't be horribly wrong. And men who are exceedingly clever, when they are wrong, they tend to be horribly wrong, even though he still does think he's right. And so I just really like, Dumbledore shows a bit of humility here. He's confident in himself, but he's also saying, look, there is a chance that I'm not right. And I think there's a real wisdom there. And I think what he's kind of passing on to Harry is, you can have confidence in yourself, but that doesn't mean that you're always going to be right about everything.
Right. And I also like that he kind of tells Harry along the lines when he's talking about, I told you everything that I concretely know. I also like that it's like, okay, now we're going to learn everything together. And that he wants him to be a partner in this and not so much a pawn in this. And I think that's an important realization that Dumbledore has had, is that he needs to leverage Harry and not try to manipulate Harry like it's happened over the last few books. So now not only are we going to be honest with him, we're just going to tell him everything we can think of and bring him along to experience it for himself so that he has another opinion. That other perspective of what's happening and what has happened is going to be really important to have those, contrary sides. And again, it feeds into that humility that he's, a big enough person to say, I want a second opinion. I want to challenge my own understanding and my own opinion of what's happening here, and let you make conclusions and draw these inevitable things yourself and not just take what I say as gospel.
Well, and it's also interesting too, because as he's trying to get the bottle open, the crystal vial that has the memory in it, his injured hand seems to be bothering him, and Harry asks him, like, if you need help, and he's, no matter, he pulls out his wand and he unstops the bottle and he pours it into the pensive. But so we get this moment where we're kind of reminded that Dumbledore is injured, and
right.
And
doesn't
right
want to
before
talk
we
about
dive
it.
into not yet, and that's the thing I think is really interesting, is that he doesn't want to talk about it yet. He keeps telling Harry that he will tell him the story. It's not time to hear that story just yet. We're going to be getting into another story, which follows this character, like we said, of Bob Ogden walking down the road on his way to confront a family, we find out, because of a misuse of magic in front of a muggle, the same thing that Harry had a problem with, or they thought he had a problem with in the second book. So a lot of second book callbacks in this book, actually.
After we kind of get through the meat of what happens here, I think I have a little bit of a thought process on why there's so many callbacks to the second book. So we get this countryside, and I found it interesting that I agree they started the characters very far away from where they were going. They probably went like half a mile down this road where they start this memory. And it does make you question, why are we starting there? But we come across this family of people. It kind of feels like my worst nightmare. This family we meet. Everything about it is my worst nightmare.
Yeah. There's this hut that feels like it shouldn't be there. It's in between all of these trees. It's hard to see. There's a snake nailed to the door of this hut.
First nightmare right there.
Yeah. Bob is attacked by this character who seems to be speaking gibberish. And it turns out that he's speaking Parseltongue. And then we get an older gentleman yelling at him. It's his son. And everything just kind of devolves from there. And so Ogden is there because this character attacked a muggle. And Mr. Gaunt, we find out these are the Gaunts, that's why we're here. He could care less about the fact that his son has attacked a muggle. But then in that conversation, they move into the house, and he not only has a son, but he has a daughter who is very mistreated. Like, he treats her like dirt. And
abusive father, nightmare
Yes.
number 2.
Exactly.
Just keep adding the nightmares here.
And he seems like it's not, I mean, he seems like he's abusive to both of his children. You know, that it's like he's not a good father to either of them. He cares more about the trinkets that they hold, which he has as Harry recollects, it's an ugly black ring, as well as a locket that was Salazar Slytherin's. And this is a family who are the last living descendants of the Slytherins. And, well, they are like this because they've spent so much time inbreeding with their cousins that everything about them just seems off.
This is one of those moments where you gotta ask yourself, what makes pure-blooded wizards so great?
I mean,
this is not
absolutely nothing.
This is absolutely not it. Like, what is it that they think makes themselves so great? Because this is the worst thing I have ever read. It is so disgusting in every way, shape, and form. Everything about it is just gross. Everything about it is just so dark. And he is so angry and belligerent at this person who is literally the head of law enforcement for the ministry. It's such a nasty chapter and a nasty interaction with some wizards, and it's just so gross across the board.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that's so interesting, too, is because what we find out as well as they're talking outside a carriage passage, and it is Tom Riddle Sr. who is passing with his girlfriend in a carriage, and they're heard talking about this family and how they're just kind of this awful family, and, you know, we just stay away from them. It also turns out that there's this whole conversation that ends up happening between the three Gaunts about how their daughter Merope, she is horrible name, by the way.
Yeah, these names are all real terrible.
Yeah, but Merope is in love with this Muggle, and they start making fun of her for that, and it starts this fight in the family, and Ogden runs away, comes back with the magical enforcement, and is able to take the son in, take the father in. And this is the moment where, you know, we stop being in the memory, and Harry and Dumbledore just have a conversation then about what happens next, because Harry is putting all the pieces together too. This is what I like, is Harry's really smart. He figures out that this is Voldemort's grandfather, Marvolo, and that this was his mother. And Harry puts together that Merope either had to Imperious Curse or Love Potion Tom Riddle Sr. to basically woo him. And I love how Dumbledore kind of puts this into context, and that he thinks it was Love Potion. Yeah,
I think the explanation from there on out is kind of where we're really focusing on conjecture of what happened. And you know, he thinks it's a love potion because Tom Riddle Sr. ends up running away. I mean, there's parts of this that are fact and parts of it that we're filling in the blanks, right? We know Tom Riddle Sr. ran away with her. We know that she got pregnant and that that's the dad. But other than that, that's where we get the conjecture of it's probably a love potion. He wasn't quite sure, but Dumbledore sort of speculates that she likely kept him under that love potion and then realized she couldn't do that forever. And so, you know, she stopped giving it to him, figuring he would have fallen in love with her for real. And that, you know, her being pregnant would be enough to make him stay. And none of that turned out to be true. And then something happened and she died after Tom was born, which is how he ended up in the orphanage. And that she never went back to the house for her father, and that when he got out of Azkaban, you know, he died shortly thereafter, couldn't make it the full time that her brother was in Azkaban, and so it just sort of deteriorated into this kind of really ugly ending. It's a very, very sad ending to the story.
It kind of makes what I think is interesting is the way that she's starting to build where Voldemort comes from. And what we see is that he comes from a background that's just awful. I mean, obviously, you've got pureblood mania, you've got I think you could say a streak of insanity running in the family. And, to be born of a relationship that has nothing to do with love or anything, it's, as we learned in the last chapter, and this is what makes it so important when we were learning about the love potion, which the love potion is not something that does anything other than create obsession. And obsession is not love. And so, of course, Riddle did not fall in love with her. And so I think that it's just very interesting to see how we're starting off the story of Voldemort. And I think it's really interesting because Harry is just kind of very interested in all this, but he doesn't quite know why this is important to know Voldemort's past. And he asked Dumbledore about this, and Dumbledore says he thinks it's very important to know these things and that it has everything to do with the prophecy. And Harry is just kind of, he doesn't quite know what to make of this, so he asks if he can tell Ron and Hermione about this. And Dumbledore says, absolutely, but you need to make sure that you don't tell anybody else because we don't want it getting back to Voldemort just how much we know about him. And so just make sure that it's Mr. Weasley and Mrs. Granger and them alone. And then Harry also puts the pieces together that ring was the same ring that Dumbledore was wearing when they went to meet Professor Slughorn. And Dumbledore's like, yep, it was. But that is not a story that I'm going to tell you tonight.
This is such a important chapter, and I love how she kind of takes each book and gives it its own focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this book is definitely sort of the creation of Voldemort as we know him, and everything about him. We get so much of his backstory here, and the next book will look into the backstory of another major character. So I really love that we're starting to get more and more of this. It just makes those characters even richer. I mean, it's super easy to hate a character when all you know are the bad things they do, but it makes it so much more in depth when you understand how they've become the way they've become, and it makes it that terrible character, like you hate them but you see what they've gone through, and it's like it's starting to make sense why he turned out the way he did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just such a terrible, dark chapter. It ends on a little bit of a high note. I do love that when you were talking about that Dumbledore allows them to him to share the information with Ron and Hermione. I do love that he says it to the effect of like, I feel like they've earned it. So yes, you can tell it to them. Like you've earned their trust. They've done all they can. That's fine. So I do love that little note. And then, the chapter kind of wraps up there. And again, Dumbledore doesn't want to talk about what happened to his hand. So.
Well, and I think that's so interesting because it just seems as though almost like that's going to be part of the story. That this is going to be woven in, but it's not time for Harry to focus on that yet.
Yeah, I totally agree. If he shares too much of that right now, then it's going to take Harry in a different direction than he needs him focused on right now. He needs him focused on something else and not on that, so he doesn't want to share that yet.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see, where we go next, and so excited. This book, we're really starting to already, with this chapter, we're digging in deep now with the subject matter.
We're cooking with gas, y'all.
Yeah, it's going to be great. But, Drea, where can everybody find you if they would like to say hello to you online?
Sure, you can find me on Twitter at PCFChick or on Instagram at Drea Coffman, and it's Coffman.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, or Vero under the name MattRushing02. I am here on the network doing Aggressive Negotiations with John Mills as we talk about Star Wars each and every week. I do 2 shows on the Trek FM network. One is called The Orb. I do that with Chris Jones. When we get a chance, we record about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. You can also find me doing the 602 Club, which is the general geek show there. We talk about all of the fandoms we love. So whether it's Star Wars, Harry Potter, anything under the sun, we're probably talking about it. And then last but not least, you can find me doing cinema stories with my good friend Courtney as we talk about films through the lens of faith. But thank you so much for checking your owl post.
Mischief managed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.